Our guy is here, Ibou of WrestlePurists. Welcome to the show, Ibou. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, guys. I always try to fit some time for Mike and JD when I'm asked, and I literally just got home a couple minutes ago. Was racing home from work, and I'm glad you guys are still on. I was listening in the last 2 minutes there, so I came in on some good conversation about Gresham and TNA. But yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to hang out here. I'm going to try to stick around for a little bit, and I'm cool with wherever this thing goes, man. I was just listening in on the Gresham talk, and it, it
Well,
it's
cool.
just it took me back immediately because I don't know if you guys know this. I spoke to John live on air like 2 days before he quit AEW or quit
No.
Ring of Honor or whatever you want, whatever he
Yeah.
was officially signed to, right?
Yeah.
But in that live interview conversation I had with John, it was very clear that this wasn't going to be a long partnership because I'm talking to him and I'm asking him various questions like, hey, like, have you been getting any instruction behind the scenes and like what's the direction of your character and how is what you do going to fit in this setting? And have you had conversations with Tony Khan and is there an understanding about what he wants from you? And a lot of what I was met with was exasperation and or a lack of clarity on his end about what's going on.
Yeah.
And I could tell it was coming from a place of confusion and frustration. And so you couple that with the fact that I remember that Ring of Honor show, it was Death Before Dishonor 2022, where he walks out there, boo boo face,
Oh my
open.
God.
You know what I mean? Clearly wasn't happy. They threw Nana on him, where he found out that he was going to be paired with Nana like the day of, and he loses the match very unceremoniously. And we find out later that he pretty much, quit and kind of went off on Tony Khan. Didn't surprise me, just off the energy when I was talking to him a couple days earlier. I was like, this isn't a guy that like is feeling what's going on right now. And I tweeted about Jonathan a couple days ago when the word came out that his deal was expiring. I actually asked people within TNA, and I got a quick answer on when the expiration date is coming out. It's going to be in January 2025. And I tweeted this. I think Jonathan is really, really talented. I thought in the pandemic he was one of the best wrestlers in America.
Me too.
And the funny thing about it, JD, is I watched that pandemic ROH TV, and it was one of those funny things where I got a real kick out of like Jonathan Gresham in the pure tournament, but it was in that way where I'm like, this is for nobody. You know what I mean? Where
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
agree, 100%.
you know what I mean? Yeah, it's
Mhm.
like I can't see this appealing to like a lot of people, but I kind of dig it. But I tweeted that basically I don't think any wrestling company has really gotten him since the dissolution of the Sinclair Ring of Honor, and it's kind of unfortunate. Like I thought TNA would be a good landing spot for him, and that hasn't really kind of materialized. I don't really know what to say about this run, but
No, it
yeah,
hasn't really been a good run. He did get a world title shot at one point with Alex Shelley, and that match was awesome.
yeah,
But it was again like you said, Ibu. It was for nobody. It was you know what I
hard. That
mean.
was hard to kill, right? Hard to kill 2022, right?
No, so he wrestled Saban before he had actually come and signed on.
Right,
He wrestled
right.
Saban in between runs, but he actually
Yeah,
it was a TV match that he
gotcha.
wrestled Shelley on while Shelley was the champion. They did that, and then he took off for a little bit, and he came back, and he was wearing a mask, and he was doing a great Muda gimmick,
Yeah, with
but
the
instead of
black
spitting
octopus
the
thing.
ink, he was coughing the ink like the mist onto his hands and rubbing it onto people, and then it turns into an infectious disease. It was weird. Jimmy Jacobs then ends up going to AEW. So I don't know.
And then didn't Kushida cook up like some concoction to like neutralize this
Yeah,
virus that
yeah,
Gresham was
no.
spreading onto people?
To his credit, Kushida, JD, you're gonna like this. To his credit, Kushida then flew to Japan and met with some of the top scientists and got an antidote to
Right.
Jonathan Gresham's ink. Brought it back, and then that's how he lost his magical powers. And the next thing you know, he takes the fucking mask off, and he's just back wrestling as Jonathan Gresham again.
People gave me shit for not wanting to do Brace for Impact anymore. And every time you talk about something, it just verifies and validates my feelings that I can't watch this shit. So I
Yeah,
mean, yeah.
yeah.
I
But
could
but
I could
then
see the dread overcoming you, you know?
yeah, it's brutal. But then like he did all that, and then he gets rid of the mask, and he comes back, and then he has like a badass match with Charlie Dempsey, which was excellent. And he actually ends up having a really good match with Kushida, and I think just recently he had another really good match with the guy. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's had some good matches. But that's the problem with Gresham is like, how do you program him into a storyline? It's a very difficult thing to do, which is why I was curious if Tony Khan would even be willing to bring the guy back.
Well, you guys kind of touched on it there in the sense that it would require a level of creative dedication and effort that I don't think he's willing to attribute to Jonathan, because I think the world of him. And if I was running my own promotion, I'd feature him in something notable. But if you're Tony Khan and you have, what's like, look at what's on his plate when it comes to like the people he needs to prioritize and focus on. And it's like a man telling him right now in a creative meeting, all right, dude, so I think we need to come up with a really extensive game plan for Jonathan Gresham. He would tell you to go fuck yourself. Yeah. So it's the funny thing about it is, to me, I'm of the mindset that Jonathan Gresham in my promotion would be the guy that you accentuate what he is good at. You allow him to talk about things he believes in. And so when he was the foundation in Ring of Honor, he had the whole thing of like, and this sport has been overrun by things that are just antithetical to the essence of the sport. Him and Jay Lethal would talk about how, Ring of Honor is overrun by violence and anarchy and this and that, and how we would restore the purity of wrestling, and Jonathan Gresham very much believes in all those things. He's a believer of just wrestling done the old way and adhering to the rules and so on and so forth. Even the little things where there's punches and rope breaks. That's why he was so great with the pure title. So I say all this to say, you would have a guy like that essentially being the pariah, the guy who kind of is like the guy shouting at the clouds, so to speak, and you draw the contrast. It's just, I don't know what promotion exists right now in America, or any notable one, or anyone with a TV deal where you could kind of plug him in and make that important. Which is, again, that's why I say, like, TNA, you would have thought like that would have been the company. You would have thought that's the spot where he could kind of stand out and do that whole thing. And there was even, I remember he did like a couple sit down interviews on the show where he kind of like expressed these views and stuff, and like that didn't really lead to anything from what I saw. And that's when he went in a sports entertainment direction, and that wasn't great. So I don't know. I'll tell you this. I suggested to somebody who would get the word out to Jonathan that why doesn't he try Mexico? Because in my view, I think with his Yave background, he would be tremendous in CMLL.
Yeah.
But
well,
I don't know
the other match that I couldn't remember off the top of my head was that he had that was in TNA that was really good was actually Laredo Kid. They actually had a really good match recently. So
see, that checks out. You know what I mean? Like, of course that's going to be a really good match.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's going to do. And the other thing, I saw WWE fans tweeting like, "Hey man, is he good?" And I could tell what the line of thinking was, because they were going to try to psych themselves up for a WWE Jonathan Gresham run. And in my head, I'm like, dude, you don't want that. You know what I mean? Like, you really don't want that. That's like, he's way too short. He doesn't like, he'd be swimming upstream over there the entire time. It's just, it would be a bad marriage from the start.
The only thing I think of is he goes over with Jordan and he does some player coach stuff in NXT.
Yeah.
Well, and he's actually currently with it. This is weird, JD. You'll get a kick out of this. Jonathan Gresham is actually booking Memphis right now. And he's booking Memphis, and he's in a feud with Jay Lethal. I'm actually going to want to check that out because I thought their matches in Ring of Honor were pretty good. So I think I want to check out what Jonathan Gresham's booking in Memphis with Jay Lethal.
Just had a 1986 flashback when you were saying that. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Ibou, I had another topic that I wanted to discuss, but somebody just dropped a super chat here.
Ooh.
So I'm gonna go ahead and lay this on you.
I'll say this immediately. Appreciate the support in the live chat, and I mean, while I'm here, if you guys want to ask me questions, feel free to just ask them or send super chats or whatever. You know what I mean?
I'm actually curious about this one because I've heard something too about this topic, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it. JD, I think you already know the answer to this.
I do know the answer to this, yes.
Yeah, has Ibou heard anything about Kevin Owens re-signing with WWE? I know the answer to this, but I'm curious to hear what Ibou has to say.
That's interesting. I've spoken with people within WWE throughout the last week or two about a number of things. Nobody could give me a straight answer on Kevin, but I have my own personal assumption, and that assumption is that he's staying. The fact of the matter is I'll put it to you this way: there's only one fork in the road that would halt his re-signing, but it's not a big enough fork to make him turn down what's going to be likely a $5 million a year contract. So yeah, the money going around wrestling right now is insane, and he was already on a great deal. So that's getting up. He's probably going to make around $5 million a year, and this I'd anticipate is maybe his second to last wrestling contract of his career. So it's all about, you know what I mean, securing the family's future, and he's one of the great utility players in the business right now. So I'd imagine
Ibou, I think you're right on that one. I have a pretty good feeling. I'm not going to report it because I don't report shit, but I have a pretty good
you're in
feeling
a lucky
he is
position
staying.
Dude, isn't it so great to hear things and not have to have the burden of like your name attached to it on an aggregation, and then like dipshits on the quotes just being like, "Who the fuck is Mike Gilbert? No, who the fuck is Mike Gilbert?" You know?
Oh, we have heard that on numerous occasions. Don't get us wrong. I have heard that. So
yeah, because there. So I did have like a couple of stories, but I don't know what I'm doing. I just talk shit on a podcast, and like it did get aggregated, and I had so many people attacking me, like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking, and it turned out like I can't remember what the story. It was like a very minor story, but you'll find out if you keep breaking TNA scoops. Those guys are vicious sometimes, man. They come after me.
That's insane, and it's just funny because like you read what people say, and they'll be like, "Man, these fucking journalists." I'm like, dude, I just have a microphone, man. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm
not,
like,
bro, I've never taken a journalism class in my life. I'm not ever going to.
Dude, I'm not Adam Schefter, bro. Like I'm not. You know.
That is funny because I do because I've been doing some like blogs on our Patreon, just kind of like fun stuff for like our audience, and I do some aggregation stuff on there, and the top 3 people that I'm actually aggregating from as far as news goes, it's Dave Meltzer, Sean Ross Sapp, and it's Ibou, man, and you've really carved a niche out for yourself with what you're doing. You've worked really hard. You've cultivated some really good sources. And the stories and the stuff that you come out with then often gets like not clarified, but like, you know, double stamped and triple stamped by Dave and by Sean. So you're kind of like right up there with them, man. So that's kudos to you.
I appreciate that. And it's funny because this is never, I never asked for this. You know, I don't think anybody wakes up and they're like, man, I want to be a wrestling scoopster. And like, another thing is there are a lot of people that play wrestling scoopster and they like the feeling of it in the cloud, but I actually genuinely don't. I always like to say on like my shows is I'm just a guy that people in the business happen to speak to, and it's not like a primary source of income or anything like that. But it is cool that, you know, to get the cosigns or the corroborations from like the people that like actually leading the top of this this field. And I think the reason why I've been able to do that, and I tweeted this to be honest, as a transparent word of advice for other people trying to engage in this, is the key is it's not that hard, to be honest with you guys, to like find 1 to 2. Once you get to a certain level, it's not hard to find 1 to 2 guys that'll talk to you and tell you things, right? But the key is, you know, you'll get those guys who will break a story. They'll run into something, they'll break a story, and you're like, holy shit, maybe this new guy I never heard of is legit. But then what'll happen is, you know, their page or their following will grow so fast from that, right? And they like the feeling of that. And they start, you then become the guy that guesses sometimes when people ask you things. And a lot of those guys, they flame out very fast because, hey man, what's going to happen with this? And like they'll make an educated guess, even though they didn't actually double check or do the due diligence or double source or triple source their things. And that's usually how those guys flame out. Well, I'm not afraid personally. I do this on my shows a lot. People will ask me in the super chat, hey Ibou, what does WWE think about this? And I'll be like, I don't fucking know. I have no issue telling people I don't know tons of things, you know, and that's okay. Nobody knows everything. You know, no one has all the answers.
Well, that helps your credibility, is the fact that you aren't afraid to say, I have no idea, right? Yeah. You're not taking this thing super seriously, because so many of these wannabe journalist guys, wannabe scoopster guys take this shit so seriously, live or die on every scoop. And I like that you kind of keep yourself grounded, even though you have done an amazing job building a following in a pretty short amount of time. So kudos to you on that. And
I appreciate it. I appreciate that, guys.
Yeah. Hey, before I get to my next question, I just got to tell you a quick story.
Talk
So
to me.
I'm listening to your Raw review, guys. He does a really good Raw review. What I like about it is they don't really review Raw.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I was gonna
So
say. I don't
because
review Raw on the Raw review.
yeah, they do a whole Raw review and they barely talk about Raw, which I think is great. I love that gimmick. Yeah,
What a
I
gimmick!
don't know.
What a gig! You know?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't. So everybody go check out the WrestlePurists YouTube channel. I think it's a must subscribe. They do great work over there. But
Thank
I'm
you.
listening to it, and I'm driving here in Hawaii, and I'm coming through the gate. So I live on a military base. Now
Mhm.
you got dudes like armed as you're coming in, right? And
Mhm.
you have to roll down your window, and you have to like show them your ID. Well,
Yeah.
I'm driving through, and there's this big redneck at the gate with an M4 machine gun, right? An M4 rifle. And I
Oh
roll
boy.
down my window, and all of a sudden, one of you guys starts making fun of Pecker Woods. And like the guy just looks at me and was like, "What the fuck?" And I was just like, and I'm like trying not to laugh my ass off because I'll be honest, I have not heard the term Peckerwood since I left high school football,
Do
which
you
is
remember what
something
I
that we
said when
all
I
would
heard
just
that?
like make fun of each other because back in the '90s in locker rooms,
Yeah.
you would say racist shit to each other all the time. That's just kind of
Yeah.
how we were. And I got you guys almost getting me in trouble coming through the gate with Peckerwood jokes.
Do you remember what I said in response to that? I was like, "Can we say this on YouTube?" I was like, "Can this be said on YouTube?"
Yeah. Dude, it was, dude. I almost died laughing. Like after I got through the gate, I was like, I can't believe they're talking about Peckerwoods on WrestlePurists. I thought that was pretty funny. But
A lot of like outdated, unused white slurs are just like preposterous. Like honky. You know, it's like
honky, yeah, yeah.
imagine like getting into a fight with a guy in traffic and you're like, "Shut the fuck up, you honky." It's like, what? All right, I guess.
I've always been a fan of Cracker myself.
Crack,
That was
yeah.
made me laugh.
Yeah. And Antonio Bryant is bringing back Cracker. He's Cracker of the Day on his Twitter page.
He does.
All right, I do have an actual question for you. I know people here want AEW talk. That's what they come for. But
Sure.
with Jimmy Jacobs gone,
Yeah.
what does AEW need to do to get their creative into the next gear?
They just, to be honest with you, they need to be on the same page. And what I mean by that is that, I feel like AEW right now creatively is comprised of a couple different islands. You have like this universe and that universe and that universe. And like, there's nothing wrong with variety on a wrestling show. I like having different things and changing the pace up. But broadly, when you're doing like the type of angle that like this Moxie angle is, and it's so encompassing, whether you want to or not, you have to have it inform what you're doing on your section of the show. Because if not, if that top angle that's supposed to like kind of spark plug your company right now, if that doesn't succeed, nobody wins anyway. So you can't be selfish and be like, well, that's this guy's, that's this producer's shit. I'm worried about my shit. No, it has to inform your stuff in some way. I'll give you guys a little bit of a mini scoop here. There were talent.
Hold on, mini scoop. Hold on. I do have a button for things like this. Hold on.
Cool.
Breaking news.
Sorry, I had to show off the new button. Go ahead.
Should recreate that thing. It says brace for impact still.
Oh,
That was
my bad.
awesome. Yeah, so like there were talent at TV that had planned pre-tapes that were stressing what I was stressing throughout this morning on Twitter, which is essentially, hey, this has to affect what we have in some way. So we should like rewrite this or change this so to reflect that. And that's like pretty vague terms, but I hope you guys get what I mean by that. Like, because here's the thing: even if you're not directly fighting with John Moxley, if John Moxley is targeting your whole company, then he's coming for you at some point. And at the end of the day, he is terrorizing your place of business, your place of work, and that should affect you or make you mad, or you should have some type of feeling on that. There should be some type of response, some type of acknowledgement verbally. So getting the creative on track, it's just everyone has to buy in, everyone has to lock in, and this John thing really has to be nailed. If this thing fucking sucks the way that like the Elite Takeover did like a couple months ago, that's another setback, to be completely honest with you. That's the thing with taking a big swing. When you take a big swing like that, if it doesn't land, like you also hurt yourself too, I think.
100%.
So that has to land, and you have to take the necessary measures to make it land, which means that it has to inform other parts of the show. There has to be this overarching bleak sense of just unease across the show. And the way I explained it on Twitter was basically AEW, the promotion, is going to run Dynamite business as usual. However, in spite of the show being presented as normal, there should be this weird tension going around like the locker room when like the talent are being spoken to by Renee or Katie or whoever the talking head is. There has to be the feeling of unease that like maybe this match is going to get interrupted, and the baby faces should always be seen almost strategizing or having a backup plan to make sure that doesn't happen. I also wrote that right now, the premise is basically the faces are fighting on behalf of the soul of AEW, and John Moxley's trying to remake the promotion that he finds unrecognizable. That's totally fine. That's a good premise. The thing is, by week 5, 6, 7, unless you develop that and develop the individuals within it, it's going to get tedious and boring. You know what I mean? Like the individuals have to have some distinguishing factors within this conflict that separate them. Because otherwise, it's like, what's the difference between Darius Martin to Andretti or one of the private party guys? They're all just gonna be faceless, a jobber adjacent dudes getting their asses kicked by Marina Shafir and Claudio Castagnoli. And in every good war movie or war story, right? To make you care when half of these characters fucking die at the end of the movie. They establish interpersonal dynamics and create little mini plots within the people so that like they're like they're more fleshed out. You know what I'm saying? So that has to be nailed, and that's just for the John stuff. That's beyond like all the basic criticism stuff that we've been saying for the longest time, like being consistent with people's follow-ups, consistent with pushes, and just broadly having a plan. If you adhere to a plan and set out to it, it makes your creative much easier. But if the shows come off like they've been changing direction week to week, like it really felt like during the Wrestle Dream build, then you're gonna run into the same issues.
I agree 100% from a storytelling perspective. Like we talked about how this BCC storyline has some NWO vibes to it. Just like you talked about, like when you watch those WCWs from '96 when the NWO first came in, it was like a dark cloud that hung over the show, right? And it did permeate all the storylines. And they did, like you said, like it went from what's next, like what are these guys doing, to the story of all the, well, who's going to join them? And then it became like, okay, well, what's Sting going to do? And for the first year of that storyline, it progressed and it moved and they allowed it to change and grow and it kept viewers interested. The problem is after year one, it shit the bed and they didn't know what to do with it. So I agree with you 100%. Like this has to be the overarching storyline of the company right now, and everything has to reflect and kind of revolve around it. Like John Moxley is the son at this point, and everything's got to move around him in some way, shape, or form. And to ignore it is literally to put it in a different planet right now.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is just, again, because the reason why I say it has to inform other parts of the show is if you don't have that, it's going to just trivialize the conflict, because if other major characters don't give a shit about what John's doing, then it's like any other wrestling storyline. Then it's just, that's the guy that comes out for his segment to fight the guys he's fighting. And how does that make that stand out any more from any other angle? And so it has to affect everybody, at least in some respect. It doesn't have to be overtly, like I'm not saying that at the start of Dynamite, every single character needs to be abandoned on the stage, you know what I mean? Like running out there to fight. Like, no, you don't got to do that, but like it should just affect the show. Like the show should feel affected by it and changed by it.
Mike talked earlier about how it bothered him that Will Ospreay didn't say anything last week about this particular storyline. So I think Mike is right. Like all Ospreay has to do is pay mind of it, and maybe he wants to do something, but then he like the Callis people do something to him to keep him away from it. Like at least it's addressed and it helps progress the main storyline, your A story, forward in some respects. So I think I've kind of come around to your way of thinking, Mike, that it needs to be addressed with him somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the top babyface in the company now that Danielson's gone. He should at least acknowledge that Moxley is running around. So he should be like, as soon as I get done with this Callis fuck and Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher, I'm coming for John Moxley in that World Heavyweight Championship. Like he has his primary feud, but he should still have his eye on Moxley because he's the top heel in the company.
Especially since Will is like Mr. like AEW.
Yeah.
He's super rah, like waving the banner.
Yeah. Hey, we just got another super chat. I don't know why this person wants to know this from you, but this is Brainbuster.
Okay.
It says, "Hey Ibou, thoughts on Yokozuna from versus Savage from 1994?"
Brainbuster rules. He super chats on our shows, and
Okay.
what I like about Brainbuster is he breaks up the monotony of like really like dull, like annoying questions I'll get on like my shows sometimes. Like people like, "Hey Ibou, like what are your thoughts on like, I don't know, just like something like really, hey, do you have an update on Garcia's contract?" And I'll be like, "Well, yeah, the update is that there is no update." And then like you'll get like that a bunch, and then like Brainbuster will pop in and be like, "So who do you think was a better top guy in All Japan, like Tenryu or like Jumbo?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I thought I kind of preferred Tenryu, but Jumbo was like the guy." And da da da. So I do like Brainbuster. The match you mentioned here, Yokozuna and Randy Savage, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I vaguely remember it being like one of I vaguely remember it being very good and Savage's last strong WWF match, and like notably better than his WrestleMania 10 match against, I think it was Crush.
Crush.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It was a no holds barred
Yeah.
or last false count anywhere match. And
yeah,
Randy Savage hung him upside down or something like that, and then ran to the ring.
right. Yeah, that was okay, but like I remember this Yokozuna match being really, really dope.
I remember I always think of Savage and Yokozuna because they were the last two people in the 93 Royal Rumble, and
Right.
Savage hits the elbow from off the top and then tries to pin Yokozuna in a Royal Rumble. And then it's cool because Yoko flips off, but it's like, why did Savage, like Savage has been in how many of these things and he just forgets the rules all of a sudden? That always bothered me.
What a beast.
Yeah. Hey, you tweeted earlier this week that you think you didn't say this exact word, so I want to tell everybody that I'm paraphrasing here. I didn't actually go back and pull up the tweet, but you kind of said that you think that there's going to be a Josh Alexander bidding war next year.
Yes,
what did you mean by that, and do you have any insight on what's going to happen with him?
Yeah, so Josh Alexander, his deal is up next year.
Yeah,
and it was not his decision to stay this additional year in TNA this year. TNA exercised their right to hold him for the option year.
Yeah, an option year. Yeah.
Yeah, he very much was, prior to the exercising of that, he very much was looking forward to seeing what was out there. And it wasn't a situation like, man, fuck TNA, I hate this place, I got to get out of here and I want to go to this place specifically. It wasn't even that. It was just a case of based on how I understood it from the people I spoke to, it was a case of just Josh wanted to just know what the market was for him financially. He wanted to know what type of money was out there for him, and was just looking to see what that type of offer was going to be. And so we follow this up now for 2025. And I spoke to people in wrestling just about TNA in general. And the feeling within the industry is that the departures of Jordan Grace and Josh Alexander specifically are all but guaranteed. And that TNA was vaguely aware of this, and that they were already kind of like looking to just divert those assets financially in other spots, and that they accepted because those are two of the better paid people on the roster. And so that's just the feeling based on, again, these are the sourcing on this, these are like officials within the industry, and just and what tends to happen is everybody knows everybody's business, hilariously. So that's kind of just the word on them. And beyond that, I was outright told from somebody within NXT that they think he's a tremendous wrestler. So I just get the sense that when his deal is up, people will be looking at him and looking to offer him a deal. AEW officials will be at the Maple Leaf Pro Show, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was some mingling taking place there.
We've talked about Josh Alexander a lot on the show because we started out as a TNA podcast and we've kind of pivoted. I do have my TNA podcast every Saturday on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/The Mike and JD Show. Got to get my plug in, of course. But we've been basically of the opinion that it was going to be a tough market for Josh because he's a little bit older now.
Yeah,
but he's got the neck issues. He just had he'd come off a major injury last year. And while he is an amazing wrestler, I happen to think he's got a lot of charisma and has a great promo. I don't know that he has big room charisma, to be honest with you. So I think that was going to hurt him. So I was kind of wondering whether or not there would actually be a market for him. But as a big Josh Alexander fan, I'm glad to hear somebody say that there actually is going to be a little bit of a market for him.
At least a little bit. It's funny. I think about Josh and like where he would land, and I feel like his WWE ceiling would be like. I think that Ethan. See, I don't know where their relationship lies at this point, but I think Ethan Page and him in a North reunion would have upside as a main roster tag team that
100%.
was a heel unit that you could throw against the Cody Rhodes and whoever as the other babyface. Like Randy Orton and Cody versus like Ethan Page and Josh Alexander would main event like house shows for a month and be the SmackDown main event on any given week, for example. They're the type of team I think like they'd win a bunch of tag belts, and they're the type of top level tag team like I said you would throw them at like two upper level pushed baby faces. I think that would be like a good landing spot for him. I don't see him getting like a high end singles push on the main roster. AEW, it's just it's just the overstuffed roster, and that's kind of what makes things a little tricky there. He's somebody that had he gone to AEW in 2020, 2021, he would have done really well. And now I don't know how well he would do, and I don't know how much interest there would be from them. But again, like I said, he has the opportunity to mingle with some of those guys this weekend.
Yeah.
He's also a guy that I think would fit really well in Japan, but the problem with Japan right now is there's just not that much money in Japanese wrestling, and it's
No,
the
no,
actual.
there's not. He's taking on Takeshita this weekend.
Yes, he is Maple Leaf Pro.
Which should be pretty fucking awesome. All right, I only got a little bit for you, and I'll let you get out of here. I know you don't got a whole lot of time, so thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Dude.
Hey, almost 1 year later, what do you think of CM Punk's WWE run so far?
That's interesting. It's funny. I thought the opening few weeks were like Twilight Zone shit. Like it was really fucking weird.
Yeah.
It was just very, very jarring. Nothing about it felt like correct. He comes into the new setting, and it was hard to really like believe what was happening. I feel like he didn't get his feet wet, and like they didn't really fully marry what he was to what they were doing, if that makes any sense. And so it was just kind of like uncanny is the best way to describe it. He's doing the stuff with Shawn Michaels on the NXT show, and he's cutting the promos with the weird haircut and calling, WWE his home. It was just very weird and very jarring.
Yeah.
And I thought it started to get going in the Royal Rumble build when he starts to interact with like guys like Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre. But there was this weird looming sense of like, can Punk still get it done in the ring? And it kind of like colored things for me personally. And I remember at the Rumble, he didn't look good. And like even before the injury, I didn't think he looked good. And so when the injury happened, it was like, man, what's going on here? And it's like you'd think it's a disaster. But I do think it was a blessing in disguise, because I thought that CM Punk's WWE run actually got going once he had his arm in a sling. And the real big turnaround, he cut the promo about the injury, and he's talking about his friend with cancer and how he doesn't know if he will ever main event WrestleMania if that's ever meant to be. And that was the first like time he cut a promo in WWE in the return, where I felt like I was actually like watching him being sincere and like believing it.
Yeah.
And then from there, that's when you started getting into stuff where Drew McIntyre is trolling him and fucking with him, and he's responding back. And then they had that segment in Chicago. It was the same show that The Rock showed up, like Bloody Cody Rhodes. They had a very like loosely scripted promo segment where it's him and Drew McIntyre talking shit, and Seth comes out, and that felt like CM Punk because he's just like really ornery and like not in a good mood, and he's like referencing Vince McMahon, and he's fucking with Drew McIntyre, and it felt like a real CM Punk segment, and that was great. And so the preceding couple months where they're finding a way to kind of keep him in the mix despite being injured, and he's doing the back and forth stuff with Drew, I thought that stuff was generally like from like the spring, early summer was really good. And then the build leading into Drew McIntyre, like the first SummerSlam match, was very like really, really exciting. Their first SummerSlam match was obviously super polarizing. I thought the second one in Berlin was a very good match, but also like closer to what I want, but not quite getting there. And then we get the high note here, which was the Hell in a Cell match that I thought was excellent. I thought that was one of the best WWE matches in a long time. And
Yeah,
so
me too.
it's hard to summarize overall, like, because it's been so much like up and down. But what I would say is that generally speaking, the trend was upwards. Like the Drew McIntyre feud threatened to like lose steam at points, like towards that last quarter. But you ended on like such a high note where you have a Hell in a Cell match that was not only excellent, but also felt like a proper Hell in a Cell match, which you haven't gotten one of those in a long time. So I thought he went on hiatus on one of the best matches he's had in a couple of years, and coming out of this, he's set to come back and likely work Gunther, which will be another great match. So I would say that Punk
and
finally got going there. What's up?
I don't mean to interrupt you, Ibou, but that's a story that you kind of broke a week or two ago. You said that it's Gunther versus CM Punk at Survivor Series, right?
Yeah, so that was floating around as an idea, and that was kind of thrown out there. And Punk's super into that, and he wants to do that match. And as of right now, that looks to be the scheduled match for Survivor Series. Yeah.
Okay. And then if you're just watching the TV, you would think that they're going to get to Rollins and CM Punk at WrestleMania next year, right? I mean, that has to be the direction.
Yeah, probably. And the thing with Gunther was coming out of Berlin, Punk cut a promo where he basically was saying like, "All right, I'm done with Drew. I beat him, and Gunther, I'm coming for you." And that's when Drew like jumps him and like he set up the third match. So they kind of threaded that in a little bit, but yeah, it looks like what I would anticipate is he's going to face Gunther. He's probably going to lose, and he's going to kind of he's going to have basically like an approximation of the Collision run following that, which is basically like have fun with tags and working with other people for for a little bit into the Rumble, and then you start looking towards Seth Rollins.
Well, I think that's good, and I think they're finally going to get to the Rollins match. I think that's a match that everybody's going to want to see. Not going to main event, a damn thing, but it'll be a big match for them.
Which he won't love. You know, the thing that sucks about aggregation is like you ever are inclined to like give a little something to the audience, but you're like, nah, then it's gonna get like aggregated, and then it turns into like another thing, you know. Like I was gonna say something, but it just it's not worth it. But yeah, he wants to do big time, big business shit.
Yeah,
you know, and so he looks at guys that he can really draw money with, you know. So that's why, like for him, he genuinely like looks at Roman Reigns, and he really wants to do that purely just because of like how box office he believes that will be. So we'll see when that happens. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, Mania looks like Rollins, and I'm not sure if that's going to main event any night, but we'll see.
No, I think the main event night one main event probably Roman versus Big Jacob Fatu would be my pick anyway, and the night two would be Rock and Cody. But there's a rumor going around that it's gonna be Rock, Cody, and Roman in a menage a trois.
I don't put too much stock in that, to be honest with you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't put too much stock in that.
That's good. Hey, before I let you go, since you don't want to get aggregated, I'm gonna try to trap you into some clickbait. You want to play?
Sure.
All right. You're starting your own wrestling company. Okay. And you can only pick one of two females who happen to be free agents. Okay. One of two females. The two females are Mercedes Moné and Mariah May. Which one are you picking to start your new company?
My mental health. I don't know. I don't love you. I mean, look, you got to give it to Mercedes just because of her track record.
Clickbait.
Yeah, sure. If you gave me like Willow or something or like DL, I'd take them right now. But even with this lackluster year that Mercedes is having, I do still think she is Mercedes, and she's capable of being Mercedes. And in a funny way, ironically, since we were just talking about CM Punk and how the beginning of that run like was really like shaky, and eventually he kind of got on the right foot. I do think the same will happen for Mercedes, even though it's been a bit of a weird start, and a couple of her pay-per-view matches were very disappointing. I'd still like to think there's enough signs there to believe that we're going to circle back to this in 5 months and say, yeah, she's really like getting going now. And I don't mean that from like a business moving standpoint. Like I think that maybe like we're past that because of like how it was handled upon arrival, but just from the standpoint of like her producing great high-end work that is befitting of someone of her caliber and her reputation, I do think she'll be able to get back to that.
I do too. I would say it's been a bit disappointing, but I did feel that the women carried All In the build to All In.
Mhm.
It just didn't happen to where that her match with Britt Baker was able to deliver. And I
Yeah.
think that Mercedes Moné plays up to her competition. Like when her opponent is really good, she's really good too. You see that when she's in there with Willow and
Yeah.
other folks like that. But when she's in there with somebody that's like Britt Baker, who I don't want to say is like terrible or anything, but she's she's not like a 5-star type of worker. She's not going to do
No.
all that. So Mercedes Moné is only as good as her opponent is.
Well, the weird thing is, I thought she in WWE, I thought she was someone who could like have good matches with outright bad wrestlers. I thought I remember she had a match with Carmella in the pandemic. I think it was TLC 2020, where it was like outrageously good. Given like it was like no disrespect to Carmella, but just like with Britt Baker, it's like she's not that type of wrestler, and they had a very good match. And so I think if there's one thing I learned in this AEW run is she no longer has the ability to do that, where you just throw someone at her who's just like, all right, and like they're gonna like make chicken salad out of chicken shit. She can't really do that, but I do think she's somebody that can still have a very good match with a very good wrestler. It kind of reminds me of how Dave Meltzer used to talk about Ric Flair and how Ric Flair would describe himself, because Ric Flair was the type of guy that in 1989 he could work a broomstick. In 99, he's not what he once was. If you give him a good wrestler, well, not 99, WCW sucked in 99, but like, let's go like 96, right?
Yeah.
Ric Flair could have a very good match with a very good wrestler. You give him Eddie Guerrero, he's going to have a very good match. Give him like another guy like that, he's going to have a very good match. But he's not the guy that like you throw anybody and it's going to be special. It's not going to be special. That type of magic isn't there. But they can still be great when they need to be great with the right person. And I do think Mercedes is in that type of situation right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to leave you with this. It's not a question, but it's a super chat. It says
Sure.
for AEW, I think they need to build their roster around MJF and Swerve. Those are their two biggest stars, in my opinion, bigger than Ospreay, Moxley, or Cole. I don't know that they're bigger stars. I think they're very good, but I don't know that you need to build the entire company around them.
Moxley's done better business than both Swerve and MJF. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did, and he's actively driven to turn the ship around both in kayfabe and reality, and so I do just trust the creative mindset of John Moxley and the state he's in right now, and then also it's like a guy like Will Ospreay is just undeniable, dude. You know what I mean? It's like how do you look at him and just like outright say like, yeah, no, we're gonna cap his potential at this level because he can't be at that level. It's like why not? Like, you know what I mean? So. I say the more the merrier. Share the wealth, and let's have all those guys be at the top rather than just it's designated to Swerve and Max. I think all those guys can coexist at the top of the card, and with the right creative, they can all benefit from that and help AEW.
Yeah. And AEW does a good job of like rotating people. Like they sent Moxley to Japan for a while, right?
Yeah.
While they were focusing in on Swerve. And then when Swerve's run was done, he takes off a little bit of time, and then Moxley comes back, and then now MJF's back. There's a lot of the pie that people can eat. So I don't really feel like we need to downgrade others to make other people look good. I think we can say, look, they're all pretty fucking good. But if you ask it for my money, Moxley has probably been their most reliable star. And MJF was a box office failure. Unfortunately, that run just didn't quite work out. So I would say if I had to pick between Moxley and MJF, I'm going to go with the guy that's probably done a little bit better business for me. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
totally...
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that's totally fair. I'd also like to shout out like Hangman Page. I mean,
yeah,
the turnaround he's made with his character like this summer was tremendous. And I hope they keep the momentum up with that. I think they're threatening to kind of like cool that down a bit, and I hope not, because where he was just in the summertime, and going into like All Out Chicago, you're looking at one of the best characters in wrestling. And so I hope they kind of keep the ball rolling on that, and I think Hangman Page could be somebody that can really help them.
Yeah, so do I. Ibou, man, I really appreciate you being here. You gave me more than 30 minutes that you promised me, so thank you so much for staying longer. You're always welcome here on the Mike and JD show, so thank you so much, and thank you for all the hard work that you're putting in, because guys like JD and I, who don't really break news, we just talk about the news that you break. That's a big help to our podcast.
We appreciate it.
Listen, I'm happy to provide that for you guys, and I appreciate you guys. You guys are like way too nice to me, but I'm down to come on anytime if I'm able to, and I had fun here. So of course I'm going to extend it a little past the time because I was having a good time.
Yeah. Everybody go follow Ibou. If you're not already a follower, go to @BackupHangman and then go to the WrestlePurists YouTube channel. You just Google or search in WrestlePurists, and you guys got like 3 or 4 shows a week on there now, right?
Yeah, and with me specifically, I do the Monday WrestlePurists Worldwide show where we talk about the weekend stuff, and that's usually where you'll likely get like all around the world information and coverage. I do the Raw review on Tuesdays where I don't review Raw, but I answer a lot of super chat questions and give a lot of information and laugh with my friends, and then we do Dynamite reviews on Thursday. So listen, subscribe to the channel. And you'll usually catch me on the channel twice a week. So definitely do that if you're someone in the audience that's unfamiliar. And if you don't follow me on Twitter, follow me @BackupHangman. Please don't harass me. And I usually do a space a week where we just fuck around and have fun. So guys, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, man.
Thank you to the audience for being so kind. So appreciate all you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you. And that's going to do it for us this week. And until next time, mahalo.
Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A game. A made no rain from the track when we unite and spit. This isn't A game, better bring your A game. Competition starting to get thick, it's the click.